Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Ray of All Trades. Here's a project I wasn't planning on videoing, but since I'm getting down to the end of it, I thought maybe there's a couple things I could share with it. Had a brake lines that were rotting out, not these up here, but down on the manifold block. I installed new brake lines all the way through. Just basically pull out every single brake line, bend it back the exact same way, reinstall them. So there's some tricks to this, one of which is always use line wrenches. Never use anything but line wrenches for doing this. They will strip out. This happens to be a 2000 Dodge Dakota, and on the front wheel, right behind the front wheel, there's a little access panel. It's actually pretty cool the way they designed this. A lot easier when it's jacked up and the wheel's off, but right now I've got it supporting it. So the manifold blocks are right back here. For the rear line, this goes up to the proportioning valve. I think those two are the two front lines, and it goes up to the proportioning valve. So they give you a nice little access spot for this. But if you're changing out one line because it rotted out, you probably want to go ahead and just do them all. I'm going to be putting rubber lines on this as well. Master cylinder, it runs down to proportioning valve, which is this block right here. Idea behind the proportioning valve is if one side of one line ruptures, there's a valve inside here that'll move one way or the other, and it'll block off that section of line, so you'll have somewhat of brakes to get where you got to go. And then so it's kind of a fail-safe that they've got designed into this, and there's a switch on here so that when it does go, the little red light on your dashboard will illuminate. So that's one of the things that'll make it illuminate. The emergency brake will make it illuminate, and then there's a sensor usually for low fluid level that'll also make it illuminate. This right here should be a ABS control module, and then every time the lines come down to like a two-way or three-way block, it's usually a manifold block. I've done everything all the way back to the rear brake lines. We'll get those pulled off. I'll show you how to make lines real quick. At the very end, I'll go ahead and put the rubber lines on in case you guys are here for the rubber lines. So this metal brake line is coming on top of the differential. This one comes straight down. Most of them have been 12 millimeters, so this is probably the same thing. That metal brake line, follow it down, comes around the front of the axle. There was a metal clip right here that I just bent up with my screwdriver so I can pull that out. And that metal line continues to bend around the axle, continue this way, and then goes up to the wheel cylinder, which is right, you guys see that right there. So I'm going to pull off, I'm going to loosen up this one and loosen up the other one, pull it down. So keep in mind, when you're taking these off, all of the brake fluid is gone. So you're relying on emergency brake cables, wheel chocks, things like that. Let me use the line wrenches, break these loose, get them pulled out, and then let's go remake a new line. This one appears to be 10 millimeter. Yeah, this would have been a 3/8, because that 10 is just a little bit on the loose side. Let's get a rag. Towel to catch the brake fluid. Alright, so the camera got knocked over and I lost you guys somewhere along the way. This will be interesting when I go back and review the video. If you can see the brake lines, I had two clips just like the one over there. I got that one loose. I followed that line all the way up, and up on top of this manifold block there's a 12 millimeter. You guys can see it, I cannot. Alright, I gotta put you guys down so I can get this off here. Alright, let's try to wiggle this out of here. Alright, meet you in the garage. Alright, let's real quick talk about double flare versus bubble flare. So the bubble flare, I don't know if y'all can see it, it's kind of flat right here. It's flat because the way that the bolt came off when it was tightened down, but it's got a rounded shape at the top of it. You see that? Whereas a double flare comes up, and this right here would have flattened out had we screwed it down, but it creates a giant cone on the inside. Y'all see that? Alright, so that's referred to as a double flare, where this is a bubble flare. And then you have something called a single flare, which is just like this, but it just flares out. And you might see some of that in plumbing, but most of the time brake lines you're going to see the double flare and the bubble flare, and even in plumbing you'll usually see a bubble flare, a double flare as well. Just wanted to show you those two real quick so we can move on to how we got to fix this. So you can see I've already changed out quite a few lines. Some of them were just small bends like that. Some of them looked like that. The ends that I ordered, and I mean you could see the lines just completely rotted away, disintegrated away. A lot of these lines will rot from the inside out, and you won't even know you've got a problem until it ruptures. But when it does rupture, if you have the ability, changing out all the lines, definitely worth it. I was using originally the old double flare kit, and you would just run the line through, put one of these fittings on there, crank it down. Found a much better tool for these lines. And let me show you. The line we just took out, I'm going to end up using the fittings off of here because the thread is different from what I ordered to these fittings right here. But let's go ahead and we're going to start on this one. I'm going to start on this one because this is a extremely tough bend, and I'll show you in just a second why I'm starting on that end. But let's go ahead and steal this fitting off of here. You can use a Dremel. I usually use an exhaust cutoff wheel, something like that. The best way to do it is to replace these fittings. Thread pitch of the ones that I ordered do not fit, so I need to do some research as to why they didn't fit. Alright, so I cleaned up the fitting. Ideally, like I said, if you can replace them, you're better off. Alright, so I found this tool. Capri Tools, double flaring tool, steel, nickel, copper. It's done by the size of the tool. Creates high quality double flares. Compared to the other double flaring tool I was using, first off, that one didn't do bubble flares easily without making adapters, but this one does double and bubble very easily, and I wanted to give it a try because I heard great reviews about it. There's a hole right here. You just slide your tubing in. Once you've got a piece of cut tubing, make sure that your fitting is on there first. Anyway, slide your copper tubing in, and you slide it in until it's perfectly even with that line right there. So I'm going to slide that in, and looking through the hole, I'll line those two up. I'm going to snug up my two retaining bolts. Then just look at the block. Make sure that it's snug all the way around. It's not off centered. It says to then take. So this is your bubble side. The bubble side flare. That's for the bubble. And that is for the double. That side there. So anyway, it says to put a little bit of grease on there. Not really sure why. Doesn't seem to really need it. This tool works pretty awesome. Thread this in. Just tighten it up until it stops turning. Just threads off real easy. Loosen up most of the way, pull it out, and you've got a perfect bubble flare. I mean, it's pretty easy. I have done a lot of lines with this already, and I've been very impressed with it. So I'll link it in the description. It also came with a, so I was used to using this type of tubing bender, and this does good. The radius, though, you really can't change the radius. I mean, it's designed, you know, that way. So I found this one here that has the 3/16 in the middle, and it has a really tight turn radius, right? In comparison to the two, turn radiuses are pretty amazing. So when you're trying to duplicate a turn like that, what you can see is, had I tried to use this turn radius, I'd never get it. And then you have one like this, which is, it's closer to that radius, but it's a lot closer. So, and we basically want to make almost a full 180 on this thing. So this will never slide after you make that bend. So you have to make sure that it's at that end before you even start. Looks like we want that turn to start. This has to be approximate, it doesn't have to be perfect. So we want that turn to start right about there. We're going to put that in there just like that. And I said we want that turn to start right about there, right? Ballpark, something like that. Alright, so, and we want to make a full 180 degrees with it. So, I'm just going to take this and keep turning it. Gonna have to back it up a little bit to complete that turn. So part of that was by hand, you know. Thing is, if you just tried to turn that by hand without wrapping it around a socket or a bender or anything like that, it would have creased. But if you have a tubing bender that makes it go into a circle, it'll hold the sides while it's bending it. What we want to do is just keep making this exact same line. So I'm going to back you guys out a little bit. I'm going to finish making all these bends until this line is almost like this line. Like I said, there's a little bit that you can do. You know, you can bend this by hand, just putting your thumbs on it. Use benders, tubing cutters, sockets, all kinds of things to try to bend it. But you're just trying to get a rough shape like this line here, so that you can put it back in place where it's got to go. There's some play there, and if you have the style that has a spring on it, try to use that. It helps protect the line a little bit, and it also helps with the bend radiuses. I don't have this type, and you can't really get this spring off of here. So we're going to bend it all the way through, and then I'm going to come back and steal this fitting at the very end, unless you have a brand new one. Alright, so we're really close to the end here to make this final bend. Let's see, I want it to go that way. Gotta line everything up. Do the best you can with what you got. So we gotta go a little bit more than 90 degrees. Looks about like that, right? Remember I said you can't get this to come past bends? Alright, so what we're gonna end up doing is cutting this off. We're gonna measure out how far out this is. Actually, we can do that in reverse order. So we're going to take this and get our best guess as to where the end of this line is. I don't want to bend it until I've got it all the way through that machine, the flaring tool. Alright, so right about there, use your line cutoff tool. Gently put it on there. Re-verify that that's where you want to cut it. It's pretty close. Snug it up, turn, snug it, turn, snug, turn. Cut it off clean. Make sure you don't have any burrs or anything. Now I need this fitting and I want to go get it cleaned off. So I'm going to cut that loose. Pick that fitting loose. Add that to my scrap pile. Let's go clean this up on the wire wheel real quick. Just blowing through it just to make sure that there was no fragments of any kind, but there won't be. Now if you use the right cutter and the right style of cutting, the right method for cutting. Remember, stick this, you gotta make sure it's the right size line. Anyhow, if you do, this tool is actually really nice. I got that one just a little bit too high in the line. Moved a little bit while I was snugging it up. So I can show you guys. The top of the line is dead even with that line coming across there. That's tightened down. The handle's tightened down so you can grip a hold of it. Make sure that your fitting is on it. Gonna add a little bit of grease. Like I said, it says to, I don't know why, I'm not used to that. Special punch grease, do not eat. It should thread in most of the way by hand. Just verify it seats down like that. You don't have to take that all the way out if you want to use it to hold on to it. I found out that when I was not taking it out all the way though, I was ending up with grease staying inside there. got my bubble flare. So I'm going to slide this fitting, make sure it goes all the way to the end. You saw how tight that was, and it barely had any sort of a bend at all. Alright, now what needs to happen? That was a question. Looks like right about there, I got to put another bend in it coming out. All right. Let's get that down to about where I think it should be. Looks like the bend would finish up right about there. Okay, let's go ahead and get that out. So it went a little bit too far. Just push it right back up. That's going to be pretty close. Alright. So, you need to go back and compare it. What I found though is when you're putting it back into place, you'll usually get a much better idea of where the bends were supposed to be and the angles. Looks like it might be a little bit long right there. So, anyway, let's go put this back in and tighten it down. Alright, let's talk line wrenches. Why do I need a line wrench? Why would I use this Craftsman line wrench over this Snap-on opening wrench? Well, here's the reason. Snap-on, it's got a pretty decent bite, right? Good size, everything else. And it's grabbing this side and this side, right? We all agree? It's not touching down here in this corner. It's not touching there in that corner. It's not touching here, here. It's only touching those two sides. Okay. Now, let's just take a Craftsman, right? It's not the best. Line wrench. And put that on. Okay. So it's also 12 millimeter, and it doesn't have as tight of a connection as that Snap-on 12 millimeter did. However, it's touching what very small amount right there. That side, that side, that side, that side, and a little bit up here. It's almost a 6-point socket, with the exception of being able to get across a line. So again, catching, you know, 4 solid sides and 2 very small partial sides, or just 2 partial sides. That's why we're using line wrenches. That's why it's extremely important to use line wrenches on these. If you don't, what you'll end up having to do, like I had one that was completely frozen and I couldn't get it to come loose. I ended up just cutting off the line, and I put a 6-point socket over the top of it and pulled it out, and then I was able to work on it. Line wrenches are a must for dealing with these things. If you don't have a set, get a set. They're cheap. You can get them from any big box store. You can get them anywhere. You don't use them all the time, but when you do need them, there's nothing that'll replace them. Get your brake line fished up in where it was before. Make sure that your area around it is clean. Let's go ahead and get the first fitting partially on. We're not going to tighten it up. Not yet. So I was struggling with that thing. Basically I took the tire off, made it a little bit easier on me. Pretty steep angle on that thing. Let's get it on by hand as much as you possibly can. If you're going to use a wrench, just make sure it's just gently turning it. Alright, we're not going to tighten this up all the way. Just going to make sure that it's on there like it's supposed to be. That's about 4 or 5 thread turns. Alright, let's pull this brake line in. The bends how we want them. So that one around the leaf spring, and then this right here. There's another one of those bends. So just to see how the line's starting to take shape. We're going to follow it down to the differential and then just bring it up on top, and then we have to come back and tighten those. Here's my brake line, and somewhere about here is a manifold block to tighten this all into. And I've got some play here, as you can see, to bend it back and forth. Just want to be careful. Tell you what, I'm going to move the camera so I don't get any brake cleaner in there, but I'm going to spray around that area, then we're going to put that line on there. I don't know if y'all saw, I had to bring the lines back behind these other lines right here. Once I'm there, then it's just get this squared up and tightened on. All you want to do is move this back and forth until the threads try to go on like they should. Something like that. Tightened up. Now, I will use an open-end wrench for snugging it down, because the line wrench does get hung up, but I'll just snug it with that, and any tightening gets done with the line wrench. I'm not going exceptionally tight, I'm just making sure that the line's not moving when I'm doing this. There we go. We're going to be coming back to change that rubber line. I think that rubber line comes with a new manifold block. Go. So something you can do if you're worried about the brake lines rubbing through these metal lines here, cut some fuel line, wrap it around there, and use that fuel line as like a buffer. And I'm about to show you guys how to do that, because I don't like the way that, since it doesn't have that spring anymore, it doesn't really have anything to hold against it. So let's open this up and open this one up. Let's get a little bit of rubber fuel line, and we're going to add those spacers in. I'll be right back. Cut a piece of fuel line and then use scissors to cut it down. I'm going to slide that around this brake line right in where that metal piece is. Let's do that over here too. Okay, something like that. And something like that. Get up my big Thor hammer here. That'll help with any sort of vibration and rubbing and whatever. The new rubber brake line for back here does go straight to the manifold block, so that one that I put on I'd have to take right back off again. Okay, we're looking at the rubber brake line. All right, and it goes from right up here, around through here, across here. So let me take off what I just finished putting on. That one up. And while we have it, we need to loosen up the other one too before we get too far. Try one more time just for another wrench on there. Get this line off. Okay, make sure that the half 1/2 inch fits that. So I had to release the emergency brake. To get this top off. There, let's go ahead and get the new one in place. Okay, put this one back in place. It looks like the emergency brake cable, the spring tension is fighting me. Go. Okay. Well, I'm hoping you guys got a chance to see that because that was a fight. Let's go ahead and put this line back on while we're here. I already looked inside of this thing for any kind of obstructions, by the way. That's snugged up pretty nicely. Okay, we're running that new line. Well, let's go ahead and get this rubber line changed while we're here. My video card got full. Basically, I just took all those clips off, run it through there. I hammered that little horseshoe off of there, and then there's a spring-loaded clamp on the other side. Now I'm going to be taking off the metal line on this side, that one there. I'm taking it off just like the first side, rebuild that line, put it back in place, and I'll be back with you guys as soon as that's in place. It's going to build just like the first one, and then I'm going to bring you guys back when it's time to put the rubber lines on the front. Okay, did the same thing on this side. Rubber hose, protect the line runs up right through there, runs up, ties in the manifold block. Let me get the rear wheels back on here. While you're here, if you haven't already, loosen up your bleeders because you're going to need them. While you have access to them from here, you can get a 6-point socket on them. Loosen up the bleeders. On this one, it's a 3/8 6-point, because we're going to need to bleed this thing completely. Meet you guys at the front left side of the car. So we got our brake line right here coming from underneath, goes up to a bracket right here. It's held in place with those 2 bolts, and then just like back in the back, it looks like we have a clamp and a brake line that I've already changed, and then we'll be able to pull this line through and free. A new one I ordered, I'll link the parts in the description. Seems to be an exact replacement. So let's get these lines broke loose, and let's see, I'm going to do that 12mm line wrench up there first. I'll crack this one loose, and then we'll pull off the 2 anchor bolts. Okay, we're going to pull out the banjo bolt on this side. Expect that brake fluids are going to come out. That thing is pretty bad shape, huh? I think I'm gonna have to clean up that banjo bolt because they didn't give me a new one with that. I introduced a lot of air into the line when I replaced it, and so the air allows the fluid to come out. All right, let me get those 2 loose and get that brake line loose. Okay, new brake line runs back in. New washers. There's one on the outside of the banjo bolt and one on the inside of that line. And let's put the wheel back on and do the other side. Alright, here we are on the passenger side, same thing over again. And we're pulling off the banjo bolt here for the brake line. Rubber line comes up. It's got two 1/2-inch bolts holding that bracket on. It comes up here into that bracket there. And we're going to be taking off that assembly there. So just want to get all that pulled loose. We're going to end up bleeding the brakes when we're done. Get the brake line loose. Take out these two. Clean this up on the wheel real quick. Just cleaned up the banjo bolt. Let's get the brand new washers out. Ailerons on this side. Let's go ahead and get that started. Go ahead and snug this on down. You're forming those copper washers into a seal. You don't have to pull this out. I'm doing it for ease of demonstration purposes. Now, let me finish taking this out and I'll show you guys what I'm trying to get. What I was trying to show you guys, this clamp that's on here, I tried to show you back in the back. It's spring loaded. You guys see that? Pull that clip off of there, and then this pulls out. This is a normal hex. Down here it's rounded. So, and it needs to fit within that groove. I'll make sure that we don't lose that bolt. We'll make sure that stays in there. Just when you're feeling around blindly, you may not be able to grasp the idea, and I just wanted to demonstrate it so you guys could see it. So it's not a perfect hex bolt underneath there. And then this spring-loaded clip goes on in that direction there, so that it basically is pushing away to hold it tight. Let me see if I can demonstrate real quick. You can do this without removing all this. I just wanted to show you guys so you could see it. So anyway, it should look something like that, and that holds it in place. And then you bolt this back down to the frame, and then the metal line goes right back onto here. And then the last thing you do is these two bolts. So give yourself some play. Okay, that's on. Let's get the brake line put on. Pretty snug. Put those two bolts in. Follows back through here and circles around the bottom. Comes up here to that banjo bolt right there. We're going to take loose the bleeder. We're going to start at the back of the vehicle. We're going to take loose the bleeder and start pulling fluid all the way through. So, because this thing's got brand new brake lines all the way through, metal and rubber. So this one says .3 brake fluid only. So let's pull the cap off, reseat that gasket back down, top it off. Okay, I'm going to keep the brake fluid handy because when I plug in this vacuum booster down here, so I'm going to open up the bleeder screw. I'm going to start back here in the back. So up here is the bleeder screw. On this vehicle, it happens to be a 3/8. I'm going to put a 6-point socket on there just to make sure it doesn't come loose on me. I'm just going to loosen it up about half of a turn to 1 turn, somewhere in there. I'm going to take this vacuum bleeder and I'm going to plug that rubber elbow onto that fitting. Keep in mind that fitting is loose, okay? We don't want it too loose because we don't want it to pull vacuum around the fitting, but we want to be able to pull suck fluid at this line right here. So it's about a half a turn right now. I just seated it by hand and then pulled it back out. All right, let's put that back on. This vacuum bleeder is empty right now, or mostly empty. You probably see a little bit of fluid in there. I'm going to set it sitting straight up. Pull the trigger and we're going to lock it on with this little lock so that it stays in a vacuum mode. Then we're going to go back to the master cylinder and we're going to make sure that it stays full of fluid, and then keep running back and forth to see how much fluid we're actually pulling out of here. So let's go ahead and lock it on. Alright. That's pull the vacuum on it. And there's nothing coming through the line right now, but we're going to keep checking. And as you can see, the master cylinder fluid level is dropping. That's all I'm going to keep doing, is filling it up and then checking to see when I have a steady stream of fluid going into this cleaner over here. See, it's starting to go down again. When the whole system's full of air like this, it takes a long time. So I'm going to get it to where we've got a steady stream of fluid coming out, and I'll bring you guys back. So topped everything off. Finished draining out the reservoir from the pump. And this thing was in pretty bad shape. So that fluid that came out of there, pretty bad. It just means it absorbed a lot of water. It was just going to keep corroding like it was. So you can see the lines that we swapped out of here. I mean, they just pretty rough shape. So all that fluid you just saw wasn't from these lines because I pulled all that out separate. That was still what was left in the residual of the system. Topped off the reservoir. We're going to take it for a drive tomorrow once it's daylight again, getting the battery all charged up. Once I'm there, hit the brakes a couple times really hard, make sure that I don't have any leaks, clean everything. You can use water to wash a lot of brake fluid off. So it's actually, water will wash brake fluid off really well. If you don't wash it off, it'll destroy the paint. So let's check this thing tomorrow and see what we got. Took it for a drive, checked all my fittings, made sure that the vehicle stopped like it was supposed to, doesn't drag, and verified there was no brake lights, no check engine lights, no ABS lights, nothing like that. And that's it. Easy way to make some custom lines, make the vehicle safe again. Thanks for hanging out with me, guys. If you got something out of the video, really appreciate a thumbs up or a subscribe. Helps the channel tremendously. Catch you guys on the next one.